Figma just wrapped Config 2026, so I thought, let's see if I can recreate Config in Cavalry. And spoiler, I can. If you missed it, Config is Figma's big annual conference, and this year, a big highlight of that conference was Figma Motion. Figma now has a timeline, keyframes. I'm excited to see motion design being more accessible, especially for people that are within the design space and use Figma every day. Now they can add keyframes to their designs. But it also got me thinking about what a dedicated motion tool like Cavalry can do with Figma's motion style. I actually live between these two worlds, Figma and Cavalry. I use Figma every day for my personal work as well as my client work, which is why I built Quiver, the bridge between Figma and Cavalry. And if you haven't used it, I really recommend giving it a shot. The link will be below. So let's recreate this config style from scratch, but in Cavalry. I like that Config has more of an abstract look and feel. You can sense the play. It doesn't take itself too seriously. And for a lot of their work, they do this sort of posterized look and feel. So posterized is when you have the frame rate a lot lower. So I'm thinking it's probably around 15 frames or something like that to get this sort of jagged stop motion kind of look. These are sort of the elements that I really want to try and recreate in Cavalry. I can see these three lines being on a duplicator. Same with this shape, that's a circle duplicator with your rectangles rotating around. And this kind of draw-on effect is actually a lot easier than you'd think. I think I want to start with this little drawing one. It's so cute. I'm just firstly going to change the frame rate to 30 frames per second. Put down a circle, some movement to this circle, add a behavior, noise. It's going to get a lot more random motion like this, increasing the frequency. I also want to set my background color to black, change this fill to that green. Here we go. Add a really cool feature called trails. And this is an experimental feature, which means in Cavalry, you need to go up to the top where it says Cavalry Preferences and show experimental features. Make sure you have this ticked on. And to bring up this window, I'm going command period, typing in trails. I love trails. What it lets me do is put an input shape into it. I'm going to change the stroke to white. And look, as that moves, it's creating a trail. Now with this trail, I can increase the width. And in this case, I want there to be a relationship between the width of the ellipse should equal stroke width, but the stroke width needs to be right click, add expression times 2. And now it perfectly matches the circle. I'm also going to change the cap style to round. It's thick, but not too thick. And I can just play with this a little bit more. These values, the minimum and maximum that it's drawing. And now to get this textured look on the trail itself, I want to add noise to the trail. And immediately you can see that it's made it all wobbly. But I think the way in which I will get more of that wobbly texture is I'm going to subdivide this, rearrange the subdivision to happen first. Use normals. Use normals. Use normals does it. So if I turn that on, actually deforming it. Cute. But yeah, I actually don't mind that. I think I like this kind of look a little bit more because as well, you can see the shape underneath, it's all vector. Whereas this, it looks a little bit more like a distortion effect. And I could do something like that if I was to plug in distortion filter. I guess that's not too far off. This takes a bit of tweaking. I enjoy this. This is why I do what I do. Padding just helps so there's no clipping. You can see if there isn't, then it clips. So I just turn that up really high. The amplitude does the distortion. If you fiddled with that more, you could get that vibe a bit closer. And there is so much you can do because it runs on a noise shader. So there's all these different shaders that I could plug in to then create that noise and get that effect. But Like I said before, it has a sort of posterized look and feel, and a lot of brands are doing this now. To be honest, Figma and FigCon have been doing it for a while. Doing that posterized sort of like look and feel, it makes it look more human. And with this like huge blob of AI, brands want to look more human while they're advertising AI products, which is inevitably not human. So read that as you will. We're humans, so I think for this experiment that I'm doing today, we can absolutely use posterize. So to do that, by going Command K, I can set the playback step to 2. What that does is it skips every second frame, and you can already see that it's like this sort of like jumping look. And so if I have this set to 30 frames a second and it's skipping every second frame, it means that it's playing it back actually at like 15 frames, which I think is pretty close, if not the frame rate that they're probably using for a lot of their animations. Make it a lot bigger in the movements that it's doing. Like, that's really cool. I'm going to show you another option as well. Let's put down a star. My trails control, that's what's like creating the movement. I'm going to disconnect that randomness on the movement. I'm going to right click and input behavior pathfinder. I can put an input shape into that, so let me put that in. There's this travel parameter, and if I keyframe this, I can like outline that shape. Yeah, that's pretty cute. Instead of keyframing it, go to the travel, and on behaviors, I'm going to add a frame, consistently keep it moving and drawing. I'm going to like elevate this a little bit further actually. Star is cool, circle is cool, a polygon. So if you go to deformers, there's a cool deformer called morph, and I'm plugging that into my star shape. I want it to morph into the circle. So if I plug that in, you can see there's a strength slider. And as I change it, it's morphing between. It's not like super pretty in these like kind of moments. It's getting this like weird shape, but to be honest with what I'm doing today, it really doesn't matter. Keyframe that on the ellipse shape and add a morph to that too. And I'm going to morph it to the polygon. Keyframe this. So it's morphing to a circle and then it's morphing to a polygon. Yeah, whatever. You see doing the draw on, it's like changing. That's a cool way to draw something on and morph between the different shapes. I'm going to leave it at that. That's a cool first ingredient. Next up, I want to do these like circles. I'm going to chuck down the circle and start just like squishing it, put in a bit of like rotation. Group this because I'm now going to put it into a duplicator. And if I didn't group this, it wouldn't maintain the rotation. If I put it into a duplicator as is, it like resets back to 0. I don't like that. So fancy little trick. If you are struggling, it's always probably safest to put your input shape into a group before you chuck it into a duplicator so that you maintain some of those properties that you've set up in the transform window. I'm going to set this to linear, maybe 5, and spread it out. It's their position. I'm going to chuck it behavior, an oscillator on the Y. That's going to make it bounce up and down. As you can see, it's doing it there. So I'm going to reduce the frequency maybe down to 0.7. This oscillator has a nifty little feature with stagger here. So let me just start adjusting this. Yeah, that's cool. Again, gonna chuck this into a duplicator. I'm not too concerned about putting this into a group because I haven't applied anything on the attribute editor there. Again, putting that on a linear to change this one to vertical, space that out a bit. Not moving the way that I want. What's happening is this stagger that's coming from the oscillator down in the duplicator is traveling all the way up into duplicator 2. So I want to like snap that off. And so to do that, I'm going into the duplicator and then scrolling down, and you can see use index context, turning that off. If you want more information on that, I do have a video on Steal My Reel episode 1 where we break down duplicators a bit more. That's moving the way that I want. But what I want these then to do is move into like more of a random position. I'm going to apply a deformer submesh. I'm going to name this, I don't know, random. This can be called rows. I can see in the Mesh Explorer that these little circles are on level 3. I'm going to make sure that this is set to level 3, which it is. Again, want more information on submesh? Check out Steal My Reel episode 3. on the position of these, I'm going to chuck in a behavior. Let's put a noise, but I can crank that up heaps. They're moving like really intense. I don't need them to move this crazy like that, but that's because it's coming from the oscillator all the way down there. Submesh also has a strength slider. So let's say maybe after a second, I want this random to kick in. So here to here. So at the start, and then it moves into its position of the randomness. It's like moving so crazy. So maybe as well as that happens, I can come back into that oscillator. What I can do is a little bit of maths so that there's a relationship between these two sliders. The strength of this random, create a connection over to the oscillator strength. I want it to be like the reverse. So when the random is at 100%, oscillator is at 0 and vice versa. So to do that, I come to the oscillator that I've like created the connection to, and I'll add an expression to its strength, 100 minus value. Now when random is at 0, oscillator is at 100, random is at 100, oscillator is at 0. Bit of maths if you ever need to do something similar. I can see that there was like some dots turning themselves on and off. Let's do it on the opacity. I'm going to add in an array. An array is a list that's storing data, and I want there to be two states. First state 100%, second 0. Right now it's set to auto index, so what that does is it's turning half of them 100%, half of them 0. Turn that off. Now they're all doing the same value, but what I'm then going to do is on the array index, I'm going to add another behavior, noise. The minimum and maximum, I'm going to go from 0 to 1. Let's crank up the frequency on this, even though the random is at 0, this is still occurring, and this happens quite a lot. Usually like the strength and this fall off will only control the position, rotation and scale. Anything below that doesn't really, so like the opacity just doesn't get picked up by that, which is fine. So before I plug in the value array, let's change this value node input into the opacity first, and then the value array can get plugged into value because that's just turning down the colored ones. I'm going to use the offset, and when we're at this point, I'm going to keyframe this. This keyframe is set to step. So at this point, it's offset by 100, so you're not seeing any of the flashing of the opacity, but once it hits here, it kicks in. And we're doing the turning on and turning off. Okay, so I just like tweak this a little bit so that the position isn't moving as crazy as it was before. But yeah, I think something like this is more than fine for today. Kind of like gives you the same vibe as what's going on here. Obviously they've crafted it a bit more than like the quick time that I just had. Next up, I want to create this, put that into a group, put it into a duplicator. And for this duplicator, circle. There's 5 of these. They seem to be moving on a continuous frame. Put in a frame on that. I'm going to add a behavior to this. Let's add a value node, keyframing some rotation. Right clicking, adding a stagger onto that, -10. I wanted some variation between these shapes, so I'm going to come into the size of my rectangle here, value to array, because that gives me two controls, the X and the Y. And in this stagger, I'm just going to play with the graph a little bit. So it's constantly moving, but I can do some offset, can push that. So like that, little spins happening here and there as well. Yeah, it's like so simple. Like right now, all the rotation is like moving at once. I don't love it. I like it when it looks more like this. I feel like that's quite interesting visually. But the only thing is, at 0 frame, it's like they don't have any rotation. So I want to have some variation in that. What I can then do is I'm going to come into the shape rotation here, add another array to that, and put in some values that I want. Yeah, vibe. That's pretty cute. That, I don't know. To me, that looks like a lot better and like a bit closer to like what's going on over here. It's so funny. All I'm doing is animating some squares. And then finally, this like particle cloud looking thing. So it might be a little bit trickier. I don't know. I'm going to take this guy and the trail will be long. Put that into a group. Trail group, shrink this down. Pattern group. Put this in a duplicator. Will be set to voxelize. And put this into a custom shape. Yeah. It's a bit weird. This isn't working exactly the way that I want. I have another way I'm going to do this. Bear with me. I've got a shape moving around and I put a noise on its position to get it going around randomly and made sure to turn off the stagger because I didn't want all of these to be like doing something different. That's in a group which is getting fed into this duplicator and I'm going to crank that up. Let's put some maths into this actually. So this maths now that I've set up is saying if I want an offset of 3 between each of these circles, the amount of circles that I have minus 1 because that tells me how many gaps there are between the circles. And then I get this value here, which that value is getting plugged into the stagger, -87. So that's a way easier way for me to get the right results. Okay, I think this will work better. I hope this will work better. Use this as my input shape. Okay, not quite, but nearly. How about let's add some noise on this. Alright. Crank it up. See how it's like really condensed there? So that kind of like ruins it a little bit. I have some like scale animation on this, so it's like going from 0. Need some fine tuning. Less stagger. Oh, that's pretty cool actually. That's pretty fun. I like that. Like, will it help if I make it bigger? Whoa. Not really. Oh my god. How easy is it to just get, like, it's just all about experimentation and changing values. And you can't get this with like other traditional animation software. Just being able to play. It's almost like I'm creating my own little like brush, you know what I mean? Put that into a group. Holy hell. Whoa. Oh my god. That's so crazy. Maybe it just looks like a screensaver or something, but like, I don't know, I'm into it. Rocking a camera. What if I crank these some more, you know? That's freaking cool. Hey, that's like pretty good. Alright. Let's just like start chunking these in. I'm so happy with how this turned out. I don't know, it's quite cool. Okay, so this is the finished product of what I put together. My computer isn't loving playing it back, so I tried to cache it really quickly. I did this off camera. I just put all of the ingredients into spinning duplicators, and then I have my texture like brush that we made before just going like all around the screen. All these dots, I can change the color of them if I want to, just with like some pre-comp overrides. I have a tutorial in Steal My Reel more about pre-comp overrides and components and all of that, so if you want to find out more, go check it out there. I think because these are pre-comps, when I was putting in some arrays to change the colors, it wasn't doing it, so I just ended up having to do it manually on each of these pre-comp overrides. So that's what was a little bit annoying. Like, ideally I wouldn't have all of these duplicators stacked on top of one another. It's the essence of it, and I think it's come out really good for what is like pretty much a quick challenge. It's just using that procedural mindset to really dig into creativity. I do recommend, if you see something that is inspiring to you, try and pull it apart and see if you could recreate it. But in saying that, don't claim it as your own. Obviously always give credit when necessary. I've got a whole series actually on breaking down Cavalry from scratch. It's called Steal My Reel. If you want to go check it out and really understand the deeper stuff, the nuts and bolts of how Cavalry really works, is there any other styles or anything you've seen online that you think I should recreate? Drop it in the comments below. There's also been some shaders that Figma has released, and see if it is recreatable in Cavalry. I have no idea. But until then, subscribe, turn the notifications on, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.